Welcome back to another episode of Into the Airbnb, where we talk with Airbnb hosts about their short-term rental experience. Today's guest is Ryan Stephens, who manages a Farmhouse Airbnb listing in Waco, Texas. Today, he'll share how his market became popular and positively impacted his listings, thanks to a TV show called Fixer Upper. He'll also share his experience as a rental owner that does not allow kids and the ups and downs of making this decision. This episode is sponsored by Airbnb, short-term rental analytics for high-return investments, comprehensive data for insights, ideas, and inspiration. Go to app.airbnb.com to find precise Airbnb data such as occupancy rate, revenue, average daily rate, and so on. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, can you tell me how did you get started on Airbnb?
In 2015, my wife and I had bought family farm from her aunt and uncle, and we were in the process of remodeling the old farmhouse, which was built in 1905. And when we finished it up at the end of 2018, we just were looking for a way to help kind of recoup some of the money that we put into the remodel and the restoration of that old farmhouse. And we weren't using the property a lot at the time. And so I decided to put it on two platforms, VRBO and Airbnb. And that was at the very end of actually that was in the fall of 2019.
Before putting it online, like on Airbnb or VRBO, were you analyzing what kind of revenue the property was going to get you? Why didn't you do it before?
Well, we never really restored the property with goal of putting it up as a short-term rental. That was just kind of a last-minute thought idea, popular in the interest in folks coming into the Waco area to see the Chip and Joanna games, Magnolia, things of that nature. There was a lot of people talking about Airbnbs and short-term rentals and just the tourism coming into the area. So we thought it would be something to see how it worked out. And within putting the listing online, we had probably, maybe 10 to 15 bookings within the first week. So it really took off quickly, which was surprising to both of us because the home is in a very rural area. But it took off, and it's been busy for the last 3 years.
Oh, that's great. You told me there was a show around there, like a filming.
Yeah, so in the Waco area, there was a popular show on TV called Fixer Upper, and it was hosted by Chip and Joanna Gaines. And since then, they've kind of turned that into a pretty large tourism draw for the city of Waco. So they have shops, bakery, things of that nature where people travel in from all over the U.S., some instances the world. I know for our short-term rental, we get people, I would say 70% of the people we get are from out of state. Only maybe 25, 30% are actually from Texas. So the tourism draw for that show, which like I said, was Fixer Upper, was the initial show they had on TV, accounts for, I would say, 80-90% of our guests.
Oh, so you would say that show attracted more people to the area? That's why the area was getting more bookings than usual, more tourists than usual?
For sure, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it works out well.
In the area you're hosting, right there in Waco, how is the seasonality like?
Our busy season is in the fall, I would say from September through November is pretty busy for us. December trails off because people are obviously traveling for holidays and things like that, Christmas, etc. In the spring, it picks up. I would say end of February through May is really, really busy for us. And a lot of that kind of hinges on different events in the Waco area. There's a celebration, which is part of the Magnolia folks business, which they do a big festival type thing in the fall in Waco, and that brings in a lot of people. There's some spring events there at Magnolia as well that bring in a lot of people in the spring. And then we have Baylor graduation in May, which Baylor University brings in quite a bit of people. So that's always booked up for us. In the summer, it's kind of slow, and it's only because we choose that, just because we don't allow children in the farmhouse. It's just steep stairs. It's on a farm. There's animals there. It's just too much for people to have to manage. From us being owners to, parents looking after their kids, it's just too dangerous of an environment for kids. We restrict it to 21 and up. And as a result, most people are traveling with their family and children in the summer. And obviously they don't book our place because we don't allow children. So that's our slow time of the year, I would say, from June, July, August.
I see. So you're offering your farmhouse as a full experience with animals included and everything?
Yes, we have Texas Longhorns, that you can see off the back of the property. The farm lies between a river and a creek, so there's lots of water in the area. So it's a place for people to escape. I would say a majority of the individuals that rent the property are from urban areas, so they come out to Texas from out of state. The first thing they want to see is things that remind them of Texas, right? So farms, mills, Texas Longhorn cattle, things like that. So we try to bring that experience to guests when they come to our property.
And how has been your experience restricting children? Because I know maybe a farmhouse sounds like a good family-friendly place, but now that you told me that you don't allow children, how has been your experience with that? What kind of guests do you usually get?
So I would say our typical demographic is, I would say, age 25 to 60, female individuals who really kind of like the arts and craft type environment that the Magnolia show kind of attracted those types of individuals, right? So crafty people, those who like shopping, antique shopping, things of that nature. So I would say the majority of the rentals that we do have are like girl weekends, right? So family and friends get together, maybe they meet up different parts of the US to go to the Magnolia silos, shop, etc., and then come and actually experience the farm environment. So I would say that's the typical guest that we have, is a 25 to 60-year-old female. And then as far as the children go, I mean, we've had some people, ask about why we don't allow children, et cetera. And it's just, there's way too much education that will be required from us as hosts and parents to actually adhere to make it safe for kids. For example, in the spring, there's rattlesnakes, not necessarily around the house, obviously, but we do our best to keep, that kind of taken care of. But, you don't want children wandering around in the pasture with flip-flops on or shorts or things of that nature. Kids who aren't raised on a farm or ranch don't understand the dangers of rattlesnakes or getting too close to a horse or cows, et cetera. There's just there's too much education that makes it not worth the risk for us as owners to kind of bring that experience. Now, if we were there on site, it would be a different story, right? Where we can do tours and things of that nature. But we do live off the property, like I said, about an hour and 45 minutes away. So it's just not feasible to do that kind of a farm experience. I mean, at some point, if we moved out there closer to the property, yes. But for now, it's just a risk and management type work that we just don't want to mess with. It's just not worth it.
I see, but if you don't mind sharing about this, are there any people taking care of the animals there in the farmhouse while you're not there and there are guests in the house?
Well, there is family in the area, but they can manage the animals from a different part of the property. So there's no real interaction between those individuals and the guest.
So, I was just asking myself, because usually when people, here in my country, when people offer a farmhouse experience, there are people taking care of the animals. So the guests and the animals can have a proper interaction and nothing bad happens, right? I was just wondering.
Yeah, I completely understand.
So you told me your hike season was around September and November. So in those months, how is your average occupancy rate like?
I would say we're probably at 75% occupancy for the month from September through November. And the same goes for March, April, May.
And what about the low seasons? How is your occupancy rate like in those months?
I would say it's low because our restrictions that we put on the property. But I would say 20 to 30% occupancy in the slow seasons.
That's even a good number for slow seasons.
Yeah, it's as busy as we want it to be. Thankfully, we can open up dates and things if we want to, but we have it restricted out to keep it manageable. And
I see. And would you say average occupancy rate and seasonality also applies for the other rentals in the area, or is it just for yours?
I would say it's probably unique to ours, just because, we're a bit more restrictive than others in the area. The home that we restored, it looks immaculate, restored farmhouse from the early, 20th century, so 1905. So there's lots of antiques, lots of things that are breakable. It's not the environment for children, right? So we restrict children from the property, whereas other properties in the area do not. So, I would say that where everyone around us is probably steady and busy as much as they want to be, right? I mean, the influx of tourism from the Magnolia silos, the Chip and Joanna, type draw, those individuals around us and other properties probably are booked up 80% of the time, year round.
Oh, so Airbnb is popular there.
Yeah, it's very popular, right? And we could be booked up at 80% year round too, maybe even more if we remove some of the restrictions that we have on our property. But for us, it's just not worth it. We like the way we have it set up now with our house rules and with not allowing children.
Yeah, I completely understand though. Are you the only farmhouse in the area?
I believe there's one, maybe two others within, I would say, 15, 20 miles. I would say ours is probably the one that's, most well restored. Looks very much like the style of home that the Magnolia people kind of present on their TV show. That's probably a reason why a lot of people rent the property, because when they look at the photos online, it reminds them a lot of the houses that they would see on that TV show. So it's almost like, they get the same experience that they saw on TV by staying in our farmhouse.
So you having this very particular listing with this particular characteristic, how is your pricing strategy like?
We keep a pretty close watch on local events in the Waco area. It could be marathons, it could be large sporting events, obviously anything to do with Magnolia silos, and we'll raise rates depending on what's in town. But our average rate right now is about, I think it's like 185 for weekdays and 225 on weekends with a 2-night minimum. And I would say, yeah, I would say an average stay is 2 nights. Occasionally we'll get 3-night stays, and then maybe once every 2 or 3 months we'll get a 5+ night stay. So that should give you an idea of kind of what our rates are and what our average, nightly stays look like.
And do you use any specific strategy for pricing, like, I know, observing the other listings in your area or using a dynamic pricing tool?
I mean, yeah, I've looked at other properties in the area and we try to be, comparable, but to be honest, I mean, the property is very, very unique, so we can get a premium on it. And if it's slow, we'll consider dropping our price down. We really haven't had to do that yet. I would say our property is the highest, or one of the top 2 or 3 highest ones when you compare rooms and total occupancy. So we'll sleep to 6 in the area, but that's okay with us. I mean, we're not trying to get rich off the property at all. If it helps us kind of keep everything maintained and support itself, then that's all we're really looking for on it. So yeah, could we double, maybe even triple our revenue? We could, wanted to. I don't have any doubt about that. It's just for our current situation, the types of guests we want, which are not, those, we don't want families there. And it's not that we've got kids obviously here, and that's, fine, dandy, great, we love them. But, we just don't want a bunch of kids coming into the property. Like I said, it's not kid friendly, right? There's lots of breakable things in the house, right? And things that we don't want to have to worry about. It's an environment that adults can appreciate. It's an environment that will look very similar to the homes that those individuals saw on the Chip and Joanna Gaines shows, and looks very magnolia silo type decorations, and those are the people that we want, coming to their property, that appreciate that. Now, granted, at some point we may open it up to children, but not at this time. So I would say a lot of our success and the revenue and average nightly bookings and things like that are pretty constricted just because the way we want to run it, right? If we opened it up and removed those restrictions off, like, allowing children, I think we would be probably twice as busy as we are now.
But I understand completely why kids are not allowed. It's way better for you to keep it closed for now so you don't get any accidents. It'll cost you a lot.
Well, we had a guest at one point bring, I think, 3 or 4 kids, and we ended up canceling the reservation, and it probably cost us somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,200 to replace, the comforters and towels and bedding and you name it, right? There was glitter, glue, paint all over everything. So those were guests that just thought that the rules didn't apply to them, and they just brought their kids, and it didn't really work out for them or us.
My!
Extremely strict on, no one under 21 for many reasons.
How did you deal with it? Did you deal it personally with the guest, or did you also contact Airbnb for that?
Well, we have a Ring doorbell on the front of the property, and so I noticed when they arrived that there was children. I called them, reminded them, and then I had to call Airbnb, and it took a couple days, but I ended up going down there and escorting them off the property. So
I see. So if you don't mind sharing, I would like to ask you, since this is like a very particular listing, how much did investment cost was, and how do you think the revenue is getting back to it?
I would say, I don't want to talk, actual dollars, but I would say over the course of the last 3 years, we've probably recouped 15% of what we put into the place. And like I said, like for the money we put in, it was a 3-year restoration, right? So we put a lot of money into the home. So at this point, from an operational standpoint, like what it costs to operate the property, like we definitely cover ourselves from our short-term rental income. I would say if you look at total investment in, we probably recoup maybe 10 to 15% of that. But an ongoing like OPEX, like what it costs us to run the place monthly, we definitely cover that with the short-term rentals that we get.
That's a good number since the listing was live since 2019, you told me, right?
Yes.
That's a good number so far, I think so.
Yeah, we're happy with it. So
great. So you told me you're managing like half remotely. You live like an hour away from the listing, right?
Yeah, it's about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes.
And how is your experience with that? Do you hire people for cleaning, maintenance?
Yeah, it depends if we're available, we can clean. We do have a cleaning crew, which have been great. I mean, I think one thing I'd like to make really clear, and I think those who have short-term rentals probably already know this at this point, but your success of your short-term rental really hinges on your cleaning crew, right? Your cleaning team. And fortunately, we've got a couple that are great. I mean, very thorough. They look at the property through the eyes of what a guest would see when they check in, and they've been great to work with. And without them, we would not be able to do what we do. So we stay on the property. We clean. It depends. I would say the majority of the time they do a lot of the cleaning, themselves, right, on our behalf.
Great. That's good to hear. Can I ask you, in these years running Airbnb, what have been your top challenges?
I would say one of the challenges that you'll see is, and it's becoming a pretty big issue with people, where you'll have individuals that they'll want to bring a pet, right? And you're like, okay, we don't allow dogs. And then, all of a sudden they'll say, upon check-in, it's a emotional support animal or something like that. So I think there's obviously a lot of people out in the world who need emotional support animals or service animals, and it's great. They're allowed, right? I do think that the Airbnb, short-term rental, VRBO, you name the platform, that community from a host standpoint are getting overran, and to some extent is abusing the system from ESAs or emotional support animals or service animals. People are just showing up with their pets, right? And that's causing a lot of frustration for owners who, don't want to go to the extra extent of cleaning hair off of couches and things like that, or if they have allergies or things like that. So, I really haven't had that issue on our property, but I know it's something that's you're seeing more and more of.
I see.
I would say one other thing too is just be very clear. So when people book with us, I provide them the house rules up front. So they see that when they book. When I get the list, when I get the notification that someone has booked, I immediately respond to them with the house rules, our expectations as hosts. And I give them an out, right? So if they see anything on those rules, which they obviously have already seen when they booked, if they don't like, they can cancel, we'll refund their money. I'd much rather have someone there who, understands our basic rules and is okay with them than to show up and think they're going to be able to break them and get away with it. So we give them an out up front if they don't like the rules, right? So, that's one thing that I'm really clear on. And I've had some people, we've had to have issues here and there, but it's for the most part, it's not a problem. And one thing too, when people do reach out and book, I respond and just confirm the number of people, right? Because our house will sleep 6. Sometimes you'll get a booking for 2 to 4 guests. And then when you see people check in on the Ring camera on the front door there, they'll bring 6 people, right? So that's just added work for our cleaning team. And from a hosting standpoint, people book. If you book for 2, bring 2. If not, let the host know, right? I think every host appreciates knowing exactly how many people are going to be at their home. It helps to give the cleaning team a heads up, right? Because if it takes 3 hours to clean up a house for 2 people, it may take them 4 to do for 4, right? So that's just something that we as hosts appreciate. If you check in with 2, or if you sign up for 2, bring 2, right? Just if not, communicate with the host so we know who to expect. It's a bit aggravating to see a booking for 2 and then 6 people show up.
I understand completely. So thank you for the tips, and that would be it for today. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem at all. I appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening to Into the Airbnb. We're looking for hosts and other people in the short-term rental industry to interview. If you had what we need and would like to share your experience in this podcast, please send us an email. All the info is at the end of the description.